Good morning. I will call to order the Clackamas County Business Meeting, and I'll ask the administrator to take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are joined this morning with Mr. Stephen Madkour, County Counsel, and then Mary Rathke serving as your clerk to the board. I'll start the roll with Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Chair Savis.
Here.
And I would like to announce that Chair Bernard is attending another meeting this morning and will not be in attendance today. So Commissioner Savis is serving as the chair for this meeting today.
Great. Thank you. If you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a revised agenda today, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We've added a board discussion item, and that'll be presented in the public hearing. But we have a presentation, and so I'd ask Erica to come on up. Erica Silver.
Good morning. My name is Erica Silver, and I'm a Human Services Manager with Clackamas County Social Services. It's my honor and privilege to be here before you in acknowledgement of Veterans Day. Clackamas County does a lot for veterans. Since 1938, the U.S. has commemorated the sacrifices of its armed forces by designating a national holiday for Veterans Day. And I'm here to acknowledge the service, commitment, and sacrifices of those who have served this great nation. And while Veterans Day is just an annual day, appreciation and support for those who have served and those who are currently serving, and for the family and friends who are also impacted by military service, is needed every day. So a huge shout out to our veterans and family members. So in Oregon, there's 310,000 veterans. In Clackamas County, almost 35,000. And we know there's veterans in the county workforce at every level, every department, and veterans are making a major positive impact on county infrastructure and services. There was 85 homeless veterans found in the 2017 homeless count. So Clackamas County has adopted some goals for veterans, including employment, training, and education opportunities so that veterans can obtain living wage jobs, easy access to VA benefits through County Veterans Service Office, and ensuring that our homeless veterans have services and supports needed to regain stable housing. So want to talk for a minute about our Veterans Service Office. Our CVSO staff last year met with over 1,700 veterans and family members. They filed 854 initial compensation claims. They had 1,580 claims granted, and that generated new federal monetary benefits of $10.2 million, and that number will continue to increase as the VA keeps working through some of those claims. So huge kudos to our veteran service officers. They're known as some of the best in the state, and I heartily agree with that. I'd like to call Maureen Thompson, and she's the Director of Community Solutions for Clackamas County, to talk about the Veterans Workforce Program.
Good morning. Maureen Thompson, Director of Community Solutions for Clackamas County. Our County Veterans Workforce Program has served 40 veterans in the last year. 60% became employed, 40% are still in training, and we continue to serve them while they're in training and to provide support for them. The average wage was $14.04, and they are employed in a variety of occupations: manufacturing, construction, healthcare, transportation, security, retail, customer service, and warehouse. And for a lot of these folks, it's skills that they learned in the military or responsibilities that they had in the military that were transferable into the private sector. Our demographics are interesting. 15% of the veterans we serve were people of color, 13% were female, 18% were receiving some sort of public assistance, 33% were receiving veterans benefits, 65% are disabled, 30% are offenders. I would also add that Community Solutions also operates the county's weatherization program, and 22% of those individuals receiving home weatherization services were also veterans. So we are closely integrating our services to veterans and not working in isolation. We are connected at the hip to the CVSO office. We do referrals back and forth. We case coordinate back and forth. We're connected with WorkSource Clackamas, where they have veterans representatives. We also do referrals back and forth if they are serving a veteran who has significant barriers to employment and they can't go to work right away, they do a referral to us. We also work closely with vocational rehabilitation and other veterans service organizations. For Clackamas County last year, the unemployment rate was 3.6%, unemployment rate specifically for veterans. So that sounds really low, but you need to remember that how unemployment is calculated. So it's calculated from those individuals that are receiving unemployment assistance. So the old adage has been add 10% to that, and that's your true unemployment rate, because they're only counting those people who are receiving unemployment. If they've exhausted their unemployment, they're not counted in the unemployment rate. We're seeing veterans that have significantly more and more barriers to employment. We've had an increase in sexual trauma individuals, both men and women, that have been uncovered during the process of our intensive case management. And lastly, I would say that we do customer satisfaction surveys with our populations that we serve it, and our average score is a 4.0 out of a 4.0 for serving veterans. So they're happy with our services, and we will continue to do the great partnerships that we have with referral and networking organizations, as well as our over 200 businesses that we work with and our many veteran-friendly businesses.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. Good to see you again.
So I want to focus the bulk of the rest of this presentation on a program that is actually funded by the Board of County Commissioners called Housing Veterans First. I'd like to call up Aaron Henry, and Aaron is a Marine vet, and he is the case manager for this program. Are you able to see that from where you are?
Yes.
Can you go through a little bit? This is a program that was started 2 years ago, and we have really not reported back to this full board, and wanted to take this opportunity to do so. Some of you have heard me say very recently, to me, the two words homeless and veteran kind of sound like fingernails on a blackboard. Those two words should never go together. So I really appreciate the board's investment in this issue, and I think you'll get to see directly some of the result of that.
All right, my name is Aaron Henry. I'm the Veterans Rapid Rehousing, Veterans Rapid Rehousing Case Manager / Landlord Outreach Person. And in Housing Our Veterans First, this is a 2-year program. The program's been around for 2 years. I've been the first to come into this position. And we started out, we were going to house 10 veteran families. However, we housed the 10 families, and then so Eric and I, we talked about moving that 10 families up to 15 families. And it's been going pretty well. Right now, we have 11 new house veterans, including 19 adults and 12 children. Okay, we have 100% housing retention, including 2 exits. The first exit that we had, the veteran did really well, and they moved over to the coast. And the second exit, it did really well as well, and that person is doing fine. The 7 veterans, 63% have increased their income, and they've increased their income by getting connected with the VSOs, Veteran Service Offices upstairs, to get their VA claims in, getting them connected with Marine for job training, Goodwill for job training, and any organization that's out there hiring or allowing vets to volunteer with them.
Yeah, so this program also has a landlord outreach component, and which has been critical to the program's success.
And it's critical because some landlords, they do not want to rent to, we've got 2 things here, homeless, and then we've got veterans. Then you put homeless, veteran together, so they're looking at the homeless piece. They've been out there forever, so they won't take care of our property. However, then when you add the veteran piece in there, they're probably coming out with PTSD or some criminal activity, and we don't want our property destroyed. So in that matter, I try to establish a positive relationship with the landlord and see if they'd be willing to work with us, explain the program to them, and again, see if they're willing to work with us. And it's been, sometimes it's hard. However, most of the time it goes fairly well.
Yeah, so the numbers are 28 new apartment complexes or property management companies and 2 private owners identified who are open to working with our program participants. Relationships maintained with 15 additional properties whose ownership or management changed. And in total, this represents more than 3,000 housing units. We do coordinate closely with the Housing Authority, and it's just been a really good component. When we were preparing this, we were preparing it as if we weren't going to have any participants that were able to come, but gladly we do. So I'd like to call up Brandy and Josh, and they're going to talk a little bit about what their life was like before they entered this program, what it's like now, and what their hopes and dreams for the future are. So we're so glad that you could join us this morning.
Hi. I'm a little nervous. I've never done this before. My name is Joshua Alverson. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, served for 6 years in the submarine force. This is my wife, Brandy. She's more loquacious than I am and is a better speaker, so I'm going to let her take over.
Hi. So a few years back, I was diagnosed with cancer, and in my 30s, that was rough. 10 surgeries later, we were bankrupt. We lost everything. We were living in our truck. And then we found the program. And the program has been tremendous, not just because they say we're gonna pay your rent and help you get into a place, but every month they're involved with us. They're helping us with a budget and plan. And we've actually gotten to the point now where we are consistently in the green. We've started a business. I completed school and been accepted to medical school. And our lives have completely changed from sleeping in a truck and trying to figure out how we're going to make it from one day to the next to thriving. And
Both of us full-time employees.
both of us full-time employed, plus our business that we started on the side.
Yeah.
And it's, I would say 150% because of that man that was just speaking, because he's been ridiculously involved, helping us every step of the way, giving us all sorts of avenues that we can take and different connections that we can make. And it's been amazing. And now we sleep in a nice, warm, cozy bed. So it's good.
So really, the 2 of you did the heavy lifting, but what the county does and what this funding did is we provided the 4 walls and we provided the foundation. And this is a great example of how once people have their basic needs met, you're able to move forward. And you can't do that when you're living outdoors, and you can't do that when you're living in your truck. So thank you so much again for being with us and sharing, so that it really helps the commissioners to understand how this thing really works. So basically, that is our presentation. Again, just really have a lot of gratitude for our veterans, and just happy to be able to be here and give you this update on the fine work that Clackamas County is doing, and it takes all of us, so thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Erica, Aaron, Maureen, and all the staff. Kind of a testament to all the good work we do here at Clackamas County. And we have a lot of staff here, and it's hard to really recognize everyone at the same time. But again, it's a real testament to the good work we do here at the county. So it's a proud day for us to acknowledge that. So that brings us, any comments? No lights. So that brings us to our public hearing.
We're going to do a photo op with all the veterans.
Okay.
I was going to say, we should have the veterans stand up.
Great, excellent. So come on up.
So all the veterans come on up here, and the commissioners will come down. Yeah, he's here.
Of course they will.
Hey, tall people in the back. Tall people in the back. There's a lot of tall people.
Great. Nice. Next is citizen communication.
Oh, there it is. Well, before all our veterans
Hey,
step
hey,
out,
guys. Wait a second.
maybe just get a show of hands. I know we have someone here was from the Navy, and then someone was here from the Marines. So just a show of hands for the Navy.
Whoa,
Those
Navy.
in the Army, Marines,
Whoa.
Air Force,
Any Air Force?
Coast Guard. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you all for your
Hey,
service.
thanks for coming.
Did they leave someone out, a branch out?
National Guard. National Guard?
National Guard, of course.
Army.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a facet of each of those, yeah. Okay, that brings us to citizen communication. So I have Don Kingsborough and Dick Walker. Two names I know.
Go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Don. Okay, well, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Don Kingsborough. My address is Post Office Box 148 in West Lynn, Oregon. I'm here to speak on behalf of Grange, but before I do that, I want to tell you personally, as a citizen of Clackamas County, how proud I am of you getting citizen volunteers involved in the program that you're doing for homeless vets. I'm referring to the tiny houses. I just think it's absolutely wonderful. All the volunteers that have come forward, I'm told that there are no slots left to help with the tiny houses. And I think that's terrific. Okay, speaking for Grange, at your meeting that you had last August at the county fairgrounds, you had a good debate about the tiny home project that you were starting on. And I specifically remember Brother Humberston and Commissioner Fisher having a little bit of a disagreement, and then they came together and it was a unanimous vote that you were going to hire Catholic Charities and go forward with that project. And I thought that was terrific. A few minutes later, I was in the cookie booth and I was taking orders, and selling cookies and selling coffee, and I had a lineup of probably 1,000 people. And Commissioner Fisher ends up beside me saying, I'm here to volunteer. And I had absolutely no mind to share with her because I was involved in trying to give change and trying to give orders. But we did exchange cards, and I did ask her about your program, and she told me a little bit about it, and we touched base later by email and by telephone. From that short meeting, Springwater Grange, which is out in the Estacada area, wrote a resolution. And the man that wrote the resolution's name is Don McKinnon. And he wrote a resolution that I'm going to read in a few minutes here, supporting your activities. The master of Springwater Grange is one Tammy Guttridge, and maybe you know her, maybe you don't. Master is our word for president or CEO. She explored a little bit more of your program, and she came up with the idea of pillowcases. And if you have binoculars, you can see on the table back there that Brother Ken had put up, we have put together pillowcases which are inventoried with shampoo, with soap, with razors, with dishwashing soap. Some will have dog food in them. Just a whole lot of things, toothbrushes, toothpaste, just there's a whole lot of stuff. And everything will be put in that pillowcase with a little bit of linens. And this came about with a financial contribution from the membership of Springwater Grange, and then individual members of the Grange went out and collected this stuff so that we will be providing you with 60 pillowcases that will be full of that stuff. And Commissioner Fisher is smiling at me because she was at the meeting where we all decided to do this. So, is that my 3 minutes?
No, no worries. Go ahead.
I am an old windbag, eh? All right. So Tammy is going to coordinate with Emily Klepper and get those products to you so that you can distribute them as veterans come and go from the transitional housing that you're putting in. I want to tell you that Grange is a grassroots fraternity. Our policy starts, as this resolution I'm about to read to you, started with a conversation that Commissioner Fisher and I had, and then I shared that conversation with Don McKinnon. He wrote the resolution. The membership of Springwater Grange passed it. It went on to the Pomona Grange, which Pomona is our word for collection of all the Granges in Clackamas County. And so that resolution is now the policy of our Pomona Grange. Well, let me just read the resolution, and I've given Mary a copy of it so she can make sure I read it correctly. It's entitled Adequate Housing for Veterans. Whereas our veterans have faithfully served with valor and distinction, and whereas many veterans in Clackamas County find themselves in homeless situations through no fault of their own. Excuse me. And whereas there is a shortage of suitable and adequate housing available in Clackamas County for many of our veterans, and whereas the Clackamas County Commissioners are trying to provide transitional housing for veterans on county-owned land in the industrial area, therefore be it resolved that the Clackamas County Pomona Grange No. 1 go on record supporting the Clackamas County Commissioners' effort in providing adequate housing for needy veterans in our county. Adopted in regular session October 28, 2017 by the Clackamas County Pomona Grange. What this means, I mean, it's a very simple thing, just simple words on a piece of paper, but what it means, it's the policy of all Grangers, all 16 Granges, all 1,200 of us in Clackamas County, that we support you in your efforts to help our veterans. I am a veteran. Okay, so that's the end of that. I gave Mary some flyers this morning, so each one of you is going to get a flyer. And the fun part of this is Grange is 150 years old. And throughout our history, for 150 years, in a couple of weeks, we're 150 years old. At the age of 14, men and women both are equal and eligible to members of Grange. And your own Ken Humberston, our brother Ken, is a member. And if y'all can come out to Springwater Grange on that first Saturday, not only will you see him in an apron serving food, but I understand he's going to join Jerry Herman and sing with the New History Minstrels. A little bit of harmony there, a little bit of harmony.
I'll do my best.
So, Our breakfast starts at 7. Our entertainment's going to start about 7:30, and it's going to go till about 11. And we invite you to come out, just participate and enjoy good breakfast at an incredibly low price, and a little bit of Grange hospitality. Thank you so much for your time and extending my 3 minutes.
Thanks to you for the invitation.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dick Wonker. I live in Bradley Road in the little community of Redland. I'm the master of the Redland Grange, number 796. And before I start, I'd like to thank each and every veteran in this room for their ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. The Oregon State Grange has a program at our convention in June where we honor all the veterans. And the Oregon State Grange and all the Granges throughout the state of Oregon support the veterans, 1,100%. We can't do enough for them. We honor them because what they've done for us is maintain our freedoms, maintain our democracy. We have a right to vote. We have our I can't think of it. I'm kind of nervous. I get kind of choked up when I talk about the veterans. But every veteran that I see, I always walk up and say, thank you, and shake their hand. And that means so much to them. I have here a poem to read to you, and it's called Thoughts on This Day of Reclamation. Jeez. And it was written by a person called Michael Assad, and he's proud to be American, and he wrote it on September the 11th, 2002. And this poem goes something like this. I saw an eagle cry with tears of sorrow. Sorrow for the senseless loss of innocent life and devastation families. I saw an eagle cry with tears of despair. Despair as he looked upon the scores of the land left behind as a reminder. I saw an eagle cry with tears of determination. Determination as the stories of heroism and sacrifice show the true nature of our people. I saw an eagle cry with tears of strength. Strength as our nation comes together to bring security back into our lives. I saw an eagle fly. As he flew, he held an olive branch for compassion in one Taron, and in the other were arrows of war to show that out our sorrows and despairs comes the determination and strength of our nation. As we seek out our enemies and bring them to justice, we will show the world that the United States of America was, is, and will continue to be the greatest nation on earth. And I'd like to present this to Mary, and if you would, you can frame it and put it in your housing project for the veterans. But this is really, truly something to think about.
It's nice.
God bless our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Dick, for your words. And past commissions have read something, what is a veteran? I'm going to do that at the end of the meeting to close the end of the meeting with, but I always get choked up doing and thinking about our veterans. So thank you for your service, and thank you for speaking those fine words. Martha, do you have something? You had your light on?
Oh, no, I'm going to wait.
Okay. Thanks again.
Sorry.
Any other cards?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, that brings us to the first reading of Ordinance Amending Title 11.03, Transportation System Development Charge of the Clackamas County Code and declaring an emergency. And we have Diedre Landon.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. So my name is Diedre Landon, and I am the Administrative Services Manager for the Department of Transportation and Development. And today we're here to talk about County Transportation System Development Charges, or TSDCs. We have reached the end of a 2-year process to update our county-wide TSDC plan. And before we can implement the new plan, the board must adopt a new project list and rate schedule. And we are here today for the first of 2 public hearings on the proposed changes. So the first question is, what is a Transportation System Development Charge, or TSDC? This short video helps explain what the fee is and how it is used. And actually, sorry, let me get to the second slide. I have to help in this effort. Hopefully can they play it back there, possibly?
Okay. Wait 1 second.
Developments pay Transportation System Development Charges, or TSDCs. These are one-time fees paid by developers when they build something new. The fee covers part of the cost of building our transportation system. Things like roads, sidewalks, bike lanes. The fees are based on how many trips the new development will create. For example, a single-family home will have much less impact than a large grocery store, so the fee is substantially less for a home. The greater the impact a new development will have on our transportation system, the higher its rate. So new developments pay fees to improve our transportation. But where do those fees go? They pay for specific projects that are on the TSDC project list. The list is updated every few years with input from the public. Each project on the list is expected to be built using a combination of TSDC funds plus other funding from grants or other sources.
Thank you. So we used that same video as part of our outreach efforts during this project, and I think it says it much better and more creatively than I can. So, see, it worked to play that time. You never know. Okay, so why update our Transportation System Development Charge Plan? There's a couple of reasons for updating the TSDC plan, one of which is that our current plan is more than 10 years old. The project cost estimates and the project list in our current plan are outdated, and we need to update the plan to reflect projects on our current transportation system plan, which is our 20-year transportation plan. In addition to the plan update, the City of Happy Valley and Clackamas County have decided to end a 17-year joint district. We began meeting with our consultants almost 2 years ago to start this process. We asked them to research other TSDC plans and rate structures so we knew what our options would be when we began the update process. We approached our plan update in small conversations, focusing on specific decision points at each meeting with the board and with our project work group. Due to the technical nature of the conversation with transportation system development charges, we targeted our outreach to interested stakeholders throughout the process to do our best to actually collect some data that would be useful during the conversation. So the TSDC work group helped us develop the new plan, the project list, and the rate schedule. We published the work group recommendations online during a virtual open house to gather feedback, and that was online and available for the public for over a month to collect some feedback. And we published the plan, rates, and the code amendments online for 90 days with a publication notice in the Daily Journal of Commerce to make sure people knew we were going through this process. There are 2 separate actions needed to adopt the new plan. We are recommending that we adopt the plan, project list, and the rate schedule by resolution, so we can update the project list and rate schedule without a full ordinance amendment in the future. Once approved, the ordinance amendments will adopt the new plan, eliminate references to the joint district, and streamline county processes. So first we're going to go through the methodology update or the plan update. The first step in the update process is to identify which projects are going to be eligible for system development charge funding. The work group carefully chose the criteria to filter the project list. What we did was we started with the Transportation System Plan and the Clackamas Regional Connections Plan that were recently adopted, and we had to find out how to actually filter that list down to a reasonable number to be on the Transportation System Development Charge list. So the work group carefully chose criteria, and they wanted to focus on projects that would increase traffic connections, reduce congestion, those projects that are either in or near future or current employment areas, and improve safety. And then we decided we really wanted to focus on those heavily traveled roads like our arterials or connector roadways, the large collectors that get a lot of traffic through the area. We have not increased the TSDC rates in Clackamas County since 2008. Under the current plan, the rate for a new single-family home would increase just over $800. That's mainly due to the fact that we're reflecting current construction costs with our new estimates, and we're also basing our rate on a completely new project list. But there would be a slight increase. So during our public notice period, I would like to just mention for the eligible projects, we received only one inquiry during all of the outreach that we did, and we were asked to consider adding multi-use pathways back to the project list. The current plan and rate schedule do not reflect this addition, mainly because it was an informal inquiry and we never received that formal request in writing. But if we did choose to add the multi-use pathways back to the list, 4 projects could be added back. There were more than that on these project lists, but only 4 would have met the other criteria that we applied. And if we did choose to do that, we would need to increase the rates to reflect that change, and it would add another $60 to each single-family home throughout the county. So the second step in the plan update was to select which traffic impact to measure. We had 2 choices. We could measure the total number of trips a development might generate in a full day, or we could focus on the number of trips a development is likely to generate during the afternoon commute. There was no clear preference during the virtual open house or the work group meetings, so we chose to continue measuring the total number of trips a development is likely to generate in a full day. The third step was to develop the rate table. We could retain a long list of rates for specific land uses, or we could consolidate similar land uses. We currently have a long list of rates, one for each specific type of land use that might be out there. What this means in practice is that anytime a change of use happens on a building and comes in for permitting, we have to compare the current use with the proposed use and find out if we need to capture some type of a system development charge for the possibly added traffic that might be happening. We asked during the virtual open house and the public survey if there was a preference, and we actually had a fair amount of support for consolidating our rate table so we could actually combine similar uses, which would make just the application, the program, more streamlined, because we would actually be able to have less changes in use that might trigger some type of a system development charge assessment. So we actually had some really positive feedback on that change. So we are proposing a consolidated rate structure for our new plan. So those are really the three main components of the plan update. And before I jump into the actual ordinance amendments, I don't know if it's appropriate at this time to ask if you guys have any questions on the plan update, the project list, or the rate schedule, or if you'd like me to jump into the ordinance amendments.
No questions?
Okay, perfect. So the proposed ordinance amendments fall into 3 different categories. So we have the adoption of the updated Transportation System Development Charge Plan, which includes the updated project list and new rate schedule. We also have amendments to reflect the termination of our joint district with the City of Happy Valley. And then finally, we have some clarifications or minor changes to streamline and simplify our TSDC process and our program. The first category is the plan updates or methodology updates. So the changes will really provide us with more increased flexibility because it'll be easier to update our project list and rate schedule in the future because we'll be able to do it simply by resolution instead of also having to do ordinance amendments along with it. We're also going to update language throughout the ordinance to reflect the transition from vehicle to person trips. We actually decided to look at our projects through a multimodal lens instead of only looking at road projects this time. And then we are also transitioning to that consolidated rate schedule. So there were a few places we needed to make updates there as well. The second was the decision to end the joint district with the city of Happy Valley. We needed to remove a number of current references to that joint district. The district is 17 years old, and after 17 years, we managed to put a lot of references to that joint district into our code language, and we need to now remove that. This is also why we are asking for an emergency clause on this ordinance amendment. I felt it was important to address that. It's not because we are going to have a community emergency if we don't pass this ordinance. The fact of the matter is, much like emergency declarations in state legislation, the clause simply allows us to implement the new plan with less than 90 days after the second reading. So the changes would take effect January 1st of 2018 is what we're asking for. And finally, we have the clarifications to the current language and our process. So we just need to clean up and clarify some language to streamline the program. During the legal review of our ordinance, we compared our language with state law and best practices, and we identified some changes that we needed to incorporate. We're proposing a transition to a single, well-known, reliable index for annual inflation. Right now we use 3, and it gets a little bit messy, especially if people discontinue one of the indexes we're using, which has happened. And our current ordinance also restricts the credits for qualified public improvements to only a percentage of the oversize improvement value. And what we've found is that state law and best practices allow for a less restrictive approach. So we looked around the region, we compared state law, and we decided we should revamp our entire credit section. So you'll see a complete removal and replacement in that particular section. And so the proposed changes will increase the amount of credit developers receive for constructing those oversized improvements on our behalf. It saves us money and it's a benefit if they are able to build it, so we're trying to provide a better incentive for that assistance. So those are the 3 main categories to the ordinance amendments. Do you have any questions about the changes to reflect the new plan, the joint district separation, or any of our housekeeping?
I don't see any. Commissioner Humberston.
Not really questions. I just wanted to make some comments based on the discussion that we held yesterday. I do like the fact that you've streamlined the number of categories. I think that makes it easier for the development community. I like the idea that you're going to be looking at how house size might impact SDCs in the future. And once that becomes a practice in other locations, we can see if there's a connection between a small house versus a large house and the amount of traffic that either one might generate. And then the other one was that we discussed, and this will be something I'm sure you'll do in all that free time that you have, and that's take a look at past studies that have indicated that this would be the traffic pattern in a given development, and see if the studies actually were accurate in terms of what the actual traffic patterns are. That would help us know whether or not the methodology is actually accurate. So appreciate the work. Thank you.
May I follow up on that really quickly? So Commissioner Humberston, thank you for bringing that up. I spoke with Dan Johnson, our Assistant Director for Development, yesterday after our meeting, and he did remind me that the workforce housing projects that we had talked about yesterday, when they do submit those traffic studies, one of the other things they're trying to support is a reduced parking standard in most cases. And so what we find is there's going to be a direct correlation if the traffic impact study were not correct, and if there is a lot of traffic that is coming into that particular development, their parking lots would be full, and in addition, the neighbors would likely get pretty vocal because there would be people parking on the road and maybe parking in other locations. And we've actually been lucky enough on the 3 projects that we have done that with, we've gone back and found that not only are the parking lots not at capacity, but we're not hearing that from any of the neighbors. but it's definitely noted because workforce housing is not the only type of development that might submit a traffic study under our ordinance. We'll definitely take that into consideration. That was good feedback.
That does make it sound like that the methodology is working.
It's definitely positive in support of it, yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Deidre, could you put the second to the last slide you had up? I think it was number 14 or page 14.
This one. Sure.
Yes, and I guess it's the third bullet. So credit the value, and I want to take this opportunity, rarely have an opportunity to highlight this, but though for those of the folks that are in the room or watching at home, just want to remind people of the Eagles Landing project. We took a lot of criticism for what was characterized or mischaracterized as a giveaway to potential development. And what in that agreement was going to be really a credit back for that very third bullet, for that very purpose, because that was a joint TSDC area with the city of Happy Valley. So Happy Valley was going to credit back. We were going to credit back some monies had they built those road improvements at a significant cost to the county had we done it, and a lesser cost for the developer. But by law, we were obligated, just like that bullet states, to return those monies back. So it was characterized as a giveaway, and long and short of it is, without going into any more detail, is that that agreement never came out to fulfillment. We got our money back on the apartments. We got our $2.4 million back. There never was any transportation giveaways because the roads were never built, and therefore the county paid out, and the city of Happy Valley paid out zero to that project, zero, and we got our check for $2.4 million for the sale of those. But I just want to take that opportunity, a rare opportunity, to highlight that and the reasons why. Any other questions, clarifying questions for staff? Deidre, are you complete? Finished?
Yep, that's the end of my presentation today.
I will then open the public hearing and ask if anyone wishes to speak. I have one card from Mr. Atkins with the home builders. Come on up.
Good morning, Board of Commissioners. James Atkins with the Home Builders Association, 1555 Southwest Bangy Road, Lake Oswego. And we also submitted a written testimony, but we wanted to be here today to first say we're in support of the methodology update as it stands before you today, and then take a moment to thank Diedre and Jimmy and Deb for all their work throughout the process. The level of engagement and outreach and communication at every step, I think, is what facilitated, is exemplary, I think, and can be used throughout any other process moving forward. And I think is the reason today why everyone is our membership is supportive of the process. The level of transparency and outreach is just remarkable. And with that, I would say if you have any questions for me to answer on behalf of the HBA, I'm happy to do so.
Any questions for Mr. Atkins?
Just like it when I hear how well our staff are doing. That's nice to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today and sharing that. Right, any other public comment on this matter? Okay, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion to read the ordinance by title only.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we read the ordinance by title only.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Humberston and seconded by Commissioner Fisher to read the ordinance by title only. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the motion is supported, and we'll ask the clerk to assign a number and read the ordinance by title only.
Okay, this is going to be ordinance number 12-2017, an ordinance amending Title 11.03, Transportation System Development Charges of the Clackamas County Code and declaring an emergency.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Any commissioners have any statements, questions, amendments? Okay. I'll announce that the second reading will be at the Thursday, November 30th, 2017, regularly scheduled business meeting at 10 a.m. So we'll continue that hearing then. Thank you. So that brings us to a board discussion item. This was the amended item, I believe, and I will turn this over to County Counsel, Mr. Madkour.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. Stephen Madkour, County Counsel, and we have a late addition to your agenda this morning, and that is the board's consideration of an emergency declaration. The board is empowered both by state statute and county code to declare emergencies for certain events. Typically, those events are natural and or man-made, fires, floods, earthquakes, and things along those lines. This board has considered including housing issues and housing crises among those emergencies. So we have drafted an emergency declaration for the board's consideration today. We have limited its duration to a 6-month time period. It is subject to a continuation and extension if the board were to decide that, and that would be in May. Prior to the expiration, you could extend the terms of that. This emergency declaration points out the challenges faced by residents within Clackamas County for finding adequate housing during inclement weather, during economic crises, and housing status crises as well. And it also empowers the board to impose measures, emergency measures. And what we have prepared for you today is, in addition to the typical ones found in state law and in our county code, you are directing staff to go out and to identify areas where temporary housing could be placed for residents to accommodate them during this housing crisis. You have also allowed for the suspension of local contract review board rules in the event we needed to hire people instead of going through what is described as a relatively transparent and prolonged process at times, RFPs, RFQs, low bid. You are empowering staff with the ability to be a bit more nimble and flexible in procuring those professional and or construction services for a variety of projects. You have also allowed for, as necessary and possible and practicable, the waiver of any county fees, county regulations, or county administrative processes to accommodate the objectives of the board in this emergency declaration. Those are items that you would have to identify as being measures that the board wants to impose, and those are listed on the declaration itself as items G and I. Well, I is typical as well. It's just immediately necessary for the protection of life and property, J and K. So if you look at the various measures, not all of them would be appropriate or applicable for this particular declaration. A through D, for example, or A through E would not be involved. I would recommend you consider F through K as being the emergency measures worthy of your consideration for this particular emergency.
Okay, so that would be F, G, H, I, J, and K.
That is correct. Mutual aid agreements, emergency funding, all other acts necessary to protect the health and welfare and safety of county residents.
Okay, great. Do the commissioners have any questions or comments? I know I have some. Commissioner Humberson.
Yes. Just to make it clear for the public, what this is about is it's in recognition in advance, for a change, that we're going to have inclement weather coming up in which unhoused people are going to be at risk of freezing to death, basically. And so what we're trying to do with this emergency declaration is make it more streamlined for staff to be able to go out and find temporary shelter places such as unused schools or other commercial buildings that are not being used currently, which we would then staff and be able to house people that currently are unhoused. We estimate as many as 1,000 people potentially may be unhoused in this inclement weather. One thing I would like to do is ask our general manager to consider this as a routine concept during the budget process in the future. Winter comes every winter. It's never going to go away. And so if we can budget accordingly and prepare accordingly, maybe every November approximately would be the time to make this declaration, free up staff to be able to make the moves that are necessary to get unhoused people housed, and have some funds set aside to make sure that we can do it.
So, yes, thank you, Commissioner Humberson. I see that as a request to bring forward what would be a policy-level proposal to the Budget Committee when we begin budget deliberations in the spring of this coming year. Happy to present that to you at the time.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Schrader.
I just want to say that I'm particularly glad we're doing this, and I really want to thank my colleagues for moving forward. Everyone had a hand in making this happen, and I think that it's really important to publicly get out to the public, actually, that we are in an emergency situation with housing. I was astounded the other day as I was driving into Portland to see the number of homeless people under bridges and on the street at this point. So it is a crisis, and I'm glad that we are acknowledging that it's a crisis, because I think the more people that are aware of this, the more able we will have an opportunity to find the solutions. So.
Great. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, and I just want to also thank my colleagues. When I sat with Chair Kafori from Multnomah County and learned that Multnomah County will no longer be housing or providing transitional shelter for our homeless families in Multnomah County, that puts a stress on us. They currently have 50 of our families from Clackamas County in Multnomah County, which means we need to act quickly and decisively to address that need. We also have a greater need in that the Clackamas Service Center burned. That provided shelter during the day for folks. That will no longer be, that's no longer available now, so that creates extra stress. We have in Clackamas County about 1,000 people that are in need of warming during the very, very cold weather. And I really want to applaud our staff who's on top of the need and diligent in looking at all alternatives. But our staff can only do so much with the rules and regulations that are in place. And we like those rules and regulations because they provide transparency and procurement processes and making sure that we have openness in how we deliver services. But when we are facing an emergency, and that it's November now, it's getting colder, and we need to be able to have our staff have the ability to enter into contracts basically to get things done. We will not be able to meet the entire need, of course. There are always limited resources, but at least we won't be constricted based on rules with this emergency. So I really want to doubly thank my colleagues. Since I got the information from Chair Kafori and I shared it with you, we responded quickly, decisively. I want to thank Administrator Krupp and County Counsel Madkour for moving very quickly so that we can empower our staff to do all that we can do to help our most vulnerable residents.
Great. I do want to add that this also ties into our veteran shelter. I know that we were concerned that we wanted to have the shelter in place and be able to house our veterans before the weather came, and the weather's upon us. And so we wanted to take extra steps to expedite that as best we could. So this is a means to accomplish that. We initially kicked this around, the idea around here, for a 3 months, so we haven't jumped into this willy-nilly. We've actually given this a lot of thought. And I, too, want to applaud everyone, my colleagues and staff, for really both these efforts. We do have a shortage. The Clackamas Service Center, as Commissioner Fisher stated, is one facility that actually houses people, but we're down a couple hundred, or an ability to house in severe weather, warming shelters for at least a couple hundred. So this is a means to be able to respond to that. I know that Multnomah County, even it was on the news yesterday, that they're taking steps to get ready for their severe weather. So I, too, want to just again thank everyone. It's been, I think, between the veteran shelter, our warming shelters, and the attention to this thing, I think it's just been fantastic to see our departments come together, multiple disciplinaries team to come together and work on this project, both the shelter for the veterans and also the warming shelter aspect. This is just a great team effort. I see Commissioner Humberston has his light on.
Very briefly, Mr. Chairman, just so the public is kind of aware, I'll reiterate that we know we have at least 80-odd veterans that are unsheltered at the moment, but another part of this is about 3/4 of the population of unhoused people are actually families with children. So sometimes there's this thought that it's just a bunch of ne'er-do-wells out there. That really is not the case. The vast majority are families, and of course we have a significant component of veterans that are going to need this shelter. So for the public awareness, thank you.
Great. So that brings us to, I'll ask for, no other questions or comments, I'll ask for a motion.
I move we approve the resolution declaring a local state of emergency and declaring emergency measures to address the housing crisis.
I'll
Second.
second.
Commissioner, okay, so that's been moved by Commissioner Schrader and seconded by Commissioner Fisher. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the motion is carried. Commissioner Schrader?
Yes, colleagues, I just wanted to let you know I'm going to have to step out here in a minute because our Community Economic and Development and Workforce Committee is at the national level, the National Association of Counties. We're doing a presentation today via phone, and I have Emily starting that. But I did promise if you would bear with me for 1 minute, I did promise the 304th Rescue Squadron from the Air Force that I would give them a shout out today. I had an opportunity to meet their families when they came home from their deployment, and their motto is these things we do that others may live. And they are a highly motivated rescue team consisting of airmen from 20 different Air Force specialties or jobs. They work together to conduct search and rescue missions in both domestic and deployed environments. They provide a vital ground-to-air mission support, specializing in technical rescue and medical care in austere environments. This team can employ from air, land, or water by any means. I'd like to give them a shout out today. They are vigilant and watching over our safety. And I was with them yesterday where I had an opportunity to hear a Vietnam veteran talk about his experience at the Hanoi Hilton as he was a prisoner of war. So a shout out to them, a shout out to their families, and all the sacrifices they're making for us. And Ken, I know you're a Marine, but I'm just getting, I just love the Air Force, just saying. Okay, okay. So is colleagues okay if I step out? All right, thank you.
Great. Councilor Madkour.
Yes, Commissioners, just a point of clarification. In paragraph 5 of the resolution, it has the emergency measures that the board can employ, and just making sure that you have identified some. Staff recommends that you check F, G, H, I, J, and K as the emergency measures, and you would want to do that when you sign the resolution itself.
Okay. So procedurally, beyond verbal, do we need a motion or amendment to the motion?
If all three of you are in agreement with those measures, that's perfectly fine. You can just
Let the record reflect it.
Yes.
Yep. And that's why I tried to make sure I stated that earlier on, those are the ones that we were going to act on. So
Perfect.
It's still F, G, H, I, J, and K.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so that brings us to the consent agenda.
Okay, today's consent agenda. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Estacada School District for implementation of the Teen Mentor Program. Approval of an agency service contract with Youth Move Oregon for the Youth Young Adult Peer Support Program. Approval of a professional services agreement with Comp Health Locum Tenens for temporary physician staff. Under Finance, approval of a resolution for a Clackamas County transfer of appropriations for fiscal year 2017-2018. Approval of a resolution for Clackamas County budgeting of new specific purpose revenue for fiscal year 2017-2018. Approval of contracts with Carlson Testing, Inc., Columbia West Engineering, Inc., KPFF, Inc., Materials Testing and Inspection, Inc., and Professional Service Industries, Inc. for material testing and special inspection services. Under Elected Officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Under Disaster Management, approval of fiscal year 2016 Flood Mitigation Assistance Repetitive Loss Home Acquisition Intergovernmental Grant Agreement with Oregon Emergency Management. Under Water Environment Services, approval of the goods and services contract between Clackamas County Service District Number 1 and Waste Management Disposal of Oregon for biosolids and grit disposal. approval of the goods and services contract between Water Environment Services and Waste Management Disposal of Oregon for biosolids and grit disposal, approval of the goods and services contract between Clackamas County Service District Number 1 and Hillsborough Landfill, Inc. for the biosolids and grit disposal, approval of the goods and services contract between Water Environment Services and Hillsborough Landfill, Inc. for the biosolids and grit disposal, approval of the goods and services contract between Clackamas County Service District Number 1 and Wasco County Landfill for biosolids and grit disposal, and approval of the goods and services contract between Water Environment Services and Wasco County Landfill for the biosolids and grit disposal. And that concludes today's consent agenda.
Do the commissioners want to move, remove, or pull any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Been moved by Commissioner Humberston and seconded by Commissioner Fisher to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the consent agenda is approved. And now it brings us to the county administrator update.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of items for you. One is a correction to something I shared with you last week, and I did mention this yesterday during our policy sessions, but I thought I'd state it for the record here at your regular business meeting. I talked last week about our Clackamas Broadband Express work that we've been doing with the Lake Oswego School District, and the fact that we were able to finish that project on time and on budget and refund the district the sum of about $141,000. But last week I stated that this contract would save the district more than $25,000 per year. I want to correct that. That's $25,000 a month. And I just wanted to make sure the record is clear about what a great job our technology services folks doing this CBX work are doing to save money with our local schools. The next item I wanted to share with you is that our Transportation and Development's Resource Conservation and Solid Waste Program has recently certified and recertified several businesses as leaders in sustainability. All of those selected have committed to sustainability through efforts in recycling and compost, energy and water efficiencies, sustainable transportation, and community engagement. And just this past April, there have been 13 new certifications at businesses like the Lake Theater and Cafe in Lake Oswego, one of my favorite spots, and also the Canby branch of Restore, Habitat for Humanity. I want to encourage all residents and businesses to check out the program on our website at www.clackamas.us/recycling/work. And just want to say what a great job our staff are doing on this regard. And then finally, I wanted to mention that our Beaver Creek Health Clinic and Hilltop Behavioral Health Centers now have prescription drug drop boxes available for anyone to drop off their unused and expired prescription drugs. And dropping off drugs in these locations will lower the chance for addiction or the possibility that these drugs could be stolen or misused in some way. It also keeps these kind of materials from being flushed down toilets or contaminating our local waterways. So special thanks to our folks with Health, Housing, and Human Services for getting these set up for folks out there. So good job. That's it. Thank you.
Great. And so now it's time for Commissioner Communication, and I'll start with Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Savas. I wanted to just mention housing, of course, has been on all of our minds, and with the emergency declaration, I don't know if people saw that there was an article in the Oregonian by Samantha Swindler about our efforts to look at what the public housing project in Oregon City, and that we are planning to sell that land because we cannot keep the units, will cost more to repair. They are very old, and it's not the best of housing there. But the article made it sound like we are not looking at the needs of the people that are in our community. And at the very end of the article, there was a question that the reporter gave to Chuck Roberts, who's our housing I call him our housing guru, but he runs the housing. And she asked the question about inclusionary zoning, and are you going to have inclusionary zoning with the new housing that will be developed there? And Chuck Robbins didn't give a response. And so I just couldn't miss the opportunity to just say that, first of all, inclusionary zoning is a tool that local jurisdictions can use. The county, when we are going through our housing project, will probably decide to develop a policy on inclusionary zoning, and that will affect the unincorporated areas of our county. It would be up to Oregon City to develop the zoning rules to allow inclusionary zoning in Oregon City. It's kind of complicated, but the one thing that I just had to mention is that when we've been talking about this, and we have had these discussions when we are talking about land, when we are talking about if we're going to entice businesses to our community, our commission has the lens of looking out for those that are in need. And when we have set in our policy discussions, we've talked about, well, when we sell that land, can we put a requirement there that so many units will be affordable? We've had those discussions. There's been consensus around that. And Richard Swift, our director, has said, yeah, we can construct that. So we have had the frame of whatever we're doing to meet those that are most in need. And I just had to state that publicly.
And I will thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Fisher. I just want to just add that we have a policy, so we take out a unit. We have a 4-to-1 policy, replacement policy. So if we remove one, our goal is to replace it with 4. So we're not decreasing our inventory. We have a deliberate policy and a program to quadruple that inventory as we displace it. So thank you for bringing that forward. Commissioner Humberston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had the opportunity to tour the military museum facility that's being developed at Camp Withicum the other day. I'm looking forward to them actually getting that opened and the exhibits online for everybody to see. I think it's going to be very interesting, and they're going back to the time before the country was formed in some of the exhibits that they expect to have there. So it's going to be a very comprehensive museum. And it's focused on those who served from Oregon. So I will encourage people to go to that once it's opened. Secondly, the local public safety coordinating committee was concerned about the justice reinvestment funds, but we got full funding for 2 full years of about $2 million of justice reinvestment funds. We were also able to fund the Los Niños Cuentan program, which is a program for Hispanic families that are in distress, women and children in particular. Had a meeting with the United States Forest Service regarding our CLT project. They are definitely interesting, and the local ranger, Jackie, is meeting with 2 of her principals, and we expect to have another meeting with them in the near future. That's tied in with the 5 environmental groups that have come to the table and have given us or offered us qualified support for the CLT project. I'm really looking forward to seeing this get off the ground. Ultimately, it will help us in the timber industry locally. It will help us hire people, develops a product that is environmentally sustainable. We intend to do this in a way that is respectful of the environment and not just a slash and burn approach, if you will. And that, I think, is why the environmental folks were willing to come to the table and have these discussions. So we're approaching it cautiously and carefully and in a cooperative way with all of the players. And hopefully we'll see this as an economic, or a part at least of an economic boom in our county, and the opportunity regionally to provide a value-added product that could be sold around the world. So hope springs eternal with me, so I'm looking forward to seeing that project get off the ground. And finally, before Mary tells me, the dog. I remembered, Mary. So this is Denali. This 6-year-old German Shepherd mix is about 106 pounds and full of love to give. He is friendly and tolerant of grooming, which is good because his coat will need regular brushing to keep him looking his best. He has quite a lot of energy for a middle-aged guy and will need a home with no livestock. Shelter staff think he is mixed with border collies, so true to their nature, he loves to chase things, which can get him into trouble without a secure fence. Denali would do best in a home with no cats and children over 9 years old. He has plenty of life to live and plenty of love to give. Come on down and meet him today. For more information about Denali and other adoptable dogs, please contact Clackamas County Dog Services at 503-655-8628 or www.clackamas.us/dogs. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Humberson. I do want to just take this opportunity with Veterans Day upon us to just say a couple things, because very rarely are the three of us up here, just the three of us. But it was a year ago when Commissioner Humberson and the rest of the commissioners attended the AOC conference, and I asked Commissioner Humberson to join me to tour the Opportunity Village and the efforts that have been done in Lane County for the homeless, for veterans, and so on. And I want to thank him, number one, for doing that and embracing this idea, which is now coming to fruition, which is the veteran shelter and all these other efforts that we took here today for all people who are homeless and struggling. And I also want to thank Commissioner Fisher today for her embracing all of this and even pushing recently for the emergency ordinance that we passed today. So just want to give my personal gratitude for your support on that. So and I'm not going to say very much today. I'm just going to read this. I'm going to close and end the meeting with this. This is something that previous commissioners have read, and it's something that's very touching. I get kind of broken up when I read it, so if I do, I apologize, but I think it's very fitting. The title of this, we don't know who the author is, but it's titled, "What is a Veteran?" Many of us have known a few veterans. Many things have been written about veterans. They are men and women who look the world in the eye. They feel the extra heart tug when the flag goes by. They step a little faster when they hear the beat of the military band. They are veterans. They are the doughboy of World War I, the GI of World War II. They have seen the Korean skies and fought the cold and silent battle of uneasy Berlin. They are veterans. They are sailors, soldiers, Marines. They are flyers, Seabees, the Coast Guard. They are veterans. They have the quiet dignity of a person who knows the price of freedom. They have the clear eyes of a person who respects themselves. They are courage living on Main Street. They are patriotism mowing the lawn on Saturday afternoon. They are good citizenship with a smile on their faces. They are veterans. They are peacetime soldiers, peacetime leaders. They are the first to volunteer in times of trouble and the last to come home. They are veterans. The veteran is a first-class fighter with a quiet walk and a sentimental grin. They are America's most honored citizen. They are veterans. Thank you, and we are adjourned.